Welcome to another edition of Frankly Fukuyama. Just as a reminder, if you like the video, please like and subscribe to it on YouTube. So I'm very pleased to be here with Gabrielius Landsbergis, who is a former foreign minister of Lithuania and was one of the staunch supporters of Ukraine, of democracy in Europe. As you are probably aware, Lithuania has been on the front lines of the struggle between authoritarian government represented by Russia, China, and Europe, and at one point the United States. And so, what I want to discuss is just the state of Europe and, the geopolitics of that region. So maybe we can start with Ukraine itself. We are both supporters of, Ukrainian democracy against this aggression by Russia. What do you make of the twists and turns that American policy has taken over the last couple of months, with Trump, at one point seeming to take Ukraine's side and now going back to Russia's? I mean, do you see any coherence coming out of this?
Well, it's very difficult to see a strategy in this because quite a lot of things contradict one another, and I think that the strategy that I've advised my European friends to have at this stage was to plan for the war or the geopolitical reality that we're alone. And then if something good comes our way, if President Trump decides, that he wants to support Ukraine in any way, like, for example, he decided to sell weapons if Europeans are buying them, so that was a good decision. If these decisions come our way, then we're just, be glad, accept it. Do not shut the door, do not sever ties, but unfortunately don't count too much on it. Because it's just it's incredibly taxing. It requires a lot of hours to be put in trying to manage the relationship, and the outcome, unfortunately, is very limited.
It's not clear that it's going to be worth that investment.
Yeah.
One thing that I was a little bit encouraged about is the greater talk about using those Russian assets that are stranded in Belgium right now, that have been since the beginning of the war, and that there was, it seemed like, a growing European willingness to be able to actually use them on Ukraine's behalf. Do you think that this is actually going to happen?
Well, so there is a proposal put on the table, which I believe is quite smart, so that Europe would not be using the money itself, but it would be taking a loan and using that money as a leverage, and the loan could be exactly the same amount. So almost 200 billion euros would be taken out. The money, the way that it works, that is that the money is in the Belgian system. It belongs to a Belgian company, basically the one that is doing the clearing of bank transactions globally, and the money is just stuck there, stranded there. And it's up to the Belgian government to make a decision whether it allows to move that money or to do anything with it or not. They've been reluctant, and it has long been a talk in Brussels that maybe they're not alone. Maybe some other bigger countries are silently supporting them in that reluctance. In their reluctance, it has never been made apparent. But so the decision was, the proposal was put on the table, and as I said, I believe that is quite a smart one. And yesterday there was a EU leadership meeting in Brussels, and unfortunately Belgium just blocked the decision. So that means that they are, unwilling, not sure whether they'd be...
There's no way within the EU that they could actually pressure Belgium more strongly to agree?
Well, I mean, EU is a political entity. So in any political entity, there are ways how you are able to get around one or another problem. Unfortunately, in many cases, Europe finds itself in a rather anemic state. Where when it's faced with a problem, it rarely finds a solution. It doesn't necessarily need to be strong arming somebody. You just might be find a way how to make sure that your country, their representatives, leaders would agree to something that you think that it's right to be that the union should be doing. Unfortunately, that is not the case. And again, so maybe something will happen in a month because it's the meetings are monthly and they need to be. It will again come to the question then, but that means that it's one more month where Europe doesn't have an answer what to do with the money and how to support Ukraine.
Yeah. So it seems to me that there's a structural problem in Europe that the three big countries are all saddled with relatively weak leadership. So that's Merz in Germany, Macron in France, and Starmer in Britain. Not in the EU, of course, but certainly key member of NATO still. And that as a result, if those three big countries don't move decisively, Europe as a whole isn't going to move.
That is probably right. Previous decisions have been moved ahead by what was called the engine of Europe. A decision by Paris and Berlin to do something together. And it's almost then impossible to form an opposition if these two countries. I mean, even United Kingdom as a part of EU would not have been able to offer meaningful resistance if two of them decided. Now apparently that. Paris is in a very weak position. Berlin is in a bit stronger one. Still, it's just still not even a year of the new government. But rise of the radical party, the AfD, probably puts enough pressure on the government so that they are, not sure as to whether they are able to make stronger steps.
It's very worrisome that you have these right-wing parties now everywhere. You just had the election of Babiš in the Czech Republic, and they had been pretty stalwart supporters of Ukraine. Do you have any insight about his foreign policy?
I think it would be closer to what Slovakia is. I would imagine,
which is not good.
It is not good. It's tough to say whether they would be openly pro-Russian, as, for example, in some cases, Fico from Slovakia is, when traveling to Moscow, giving praise to Putin and kind of. So Babiš might find, himself in a bit more restrained because there is a big group in Czech society that is very much anti-Russian, very much pro-Ukrainian. So for him to polarize that too much maybe would not be the best way to go forward, but he will find a way. It will become contentious, and then I think that we have to be prepared to find him in the grouping of Orban and Fico. And look, even Poland, which a year ago seemed a very promising, potentially even leader in many of our European issues. Economy is doing wonderfully. Politically, they elected the government. A center-right government that seemed kind of in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing for Ukraine. They seemed quite all right. And then, they elected the president that is from another party, and now they have this cohabitation. Which unfortunately is not helping them, again, to claim at least partially, leadership in Europe.
And it's undermining the legitimacy of the ruling coalition because they made a lot of promises about policy changes they'd make, but they haven't been able to move forward on a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, they now are in a very tough position as well. The coalition is still holding, but it's not a very strong one. It's clear that the interests starting to differ between the parties. Now they're looking for the upcoming election, the parliamentary election, trying to figure out, how best is to approach this, together, separately. Should we break the government? Should we break the coalition? Can we continue? All these sorts of things, I'm sure that they are going through people's minds. And now we have a president with a fresh mandate who is clearly opposing to the government.
So when we were talking earlier, you said that even in Lithuania you have a right-wing party that has been gaining ground, and that perhaps in response to pressure from that kind of opinion, you're not willing to host Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the Belarusian opposition leader.
I was really worried when 2 weeks ago there was an announcement made by Svetlana's office that without almost any prior notice, that the security detail has been removed, telling that just by saying that security situation has changed, even though very little explanation as to what in reality has changed was provided. So and to me it is clear that without the security, and living so close, Vilnius is just 30 kilometers away from Belarus, so and quite a lot of Belarusians are able to move freely back and forth. Without the security, she might start feeling that her life, her work is in jeopardy, and then in a way she would need to find a safer place, or the one that could offer her enough security for her to continue her work. So I was very upset about the news. What happened since then was that there was quite a lot of international reaction to this. People would not have expected this to happen in Lithuania. Many questions have been asked, and and of course, it is impossible to hide the fact that yes, we have a radical populist party now in the government, in the coalition and in the government, that might or might not influence the decisions that are being made by the government at large. They are there. They are very critical on whatever values-based decisions would be made. So that is quite obvious. Now the security detail has been reinstated.
It has, good.
It has, but just for a month and only in Lithuania. So that means that so for example, just yesterday it was announced that she had to travel to Armenia to attend to some events, meet the leaders, and without the security, she decided not to go. It seemed
that's probably wise.
Yeah. So it's still affecting. We don't know what will happen when the month will be over. If the government will decide to remove the security from her, she might leave.
Yeah. Now let's talk about probably the biggest initiative that you took when you were foreign minister, which was the building the relationship with Taiwan that really annoyed the PRC government no end. Tell me about the origins of that. Why did you decide to do that, and what have been the consequences?
Well, there have been a couple of decisions that influenced, a couple of thoughts that influenced this decision. So one of them is that for a while, I would say probably for the last decade, we've seen PRC becoming a much larger and more important player in the Central and Eastern Europe. Proactive diplomacy, pressuring, trying to steer the countries, on one hand promising, goodies, trade, investment, whatnot. On the other hand, strong arming the countries so that they would become more of a agents within, at least European Union, to foster China's interests. And we've seen that happening in Lithuania. We did not like it, and we took steps to limit their activities. But then the thought, we took it further. So if nothing is going to change, that means that China's influence in Europe, and especially in the smaller countries of Europe, will grow. So we decided to take active steps in order to balance that out. Our businesses need relationship with countries in Indo-Pacific, either to attract investment in specific sectors, high-tech sectors that have knowledge out there. Also to have an access to the markets and to imports of minerals and critical minerals that are out there. So we've set out to balance China's activity in our country with our diplomatic efforts with other countries. So we opened a series of embassies in being again small country of 2.8 million. So that is some challenge.
Yeah.
So now we have an embassy in Australia and South Korea. Now, we've left an advice to the incoming government to open an embassy in Philippines. And one of them was to open an office in Taipei. And a reciprocal action would be for Taiwanese to open an office in Lithuania. And they've asked to open an office under their name, so that it would be called not a Taipei office, but it would be called Taiwan office. And I understand that there is a question of identity that China is so much worried about. We see very similar narratives created by Russia, or when it comes to Ukraine. Whether Ukrainians are a separate nation, whether they should have a separate language, maybe they're just. Putin has been saying that since 2012. This everything. They hide it under the brotherhood of very similar countries and peoples under the umbrella of that, but still, when you look under, you understand that basically it's imperialistic vision. And so very similar things are happening, with Chinese relationship to Taiwan, right? So deny any sort of identity or difference, with the idea that one day that could be used against China's vision to reincorporate Taiwan, maybe with not so peaceful means. So I believe that it's important to allow a country, the people to have their identity expressed in that way. It doesn't infringe on our treaties with China. It is not a political office. So we took a decision to allow them that. So in 2021, they've opened an office. It's there. It's still called Taiwan.
And the Chinese did not like this.
Oh, no. No.
What are some of the retaliatory measures?
So the retaliation was very harsh. Basically, they wanted to have fast sanctions, and since they are part of WTO, it's impossible to have that, without breaking some rules and regulations that, at least supposedly bind us. So they used what was seen as a technical error. Lithuania just disappeared suddenly from the custom systems, in electronic custom systems in China. So that happened so that almost none of our exporters could clear anything that they would normally export to China.
What percentage of your exports did that constitute?
It's not so much. So that again could have that allowed us more freedom to to make decisions.
And how much do you buy from China?
We would buy much more. They stopped that as well, but then quite quickly they resumed. Because for them, selling even to the country that they don't like is still seen as something that they benefit from.
Right.
So exports were stopped basically overnight. It took a while, and then some of the goods started, finding their ways back into the Chinese market. Mostly it was the high-end products, such as lasers, optical products. And now I think that the trade is almost at the same level as it has been before.
Good. Well, I'm glad you managed to survive that. Did you get adequate solidarity from the other members of the EU when this happened?
I think that the US led the way, really supporting us. I think that it was an important example of solidarity, right? So when very similar things happened to Australia, I don't think that there was enough solidarity, neither from, I wouldn't know, how much did Australia receive from help from United States, but Europe was not very much interested in that case. So the previous administration really, tried to show that it is in America's interest to stand with allies when they are under pressure from China, and they rallied friends as well. So it was not often do a country like a small country like mine would get a resolution, a statement by G7 countries. That was when we had that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So then European Union as well, issued support, and that helped get us through.
Yeah, good. Okay, well, I want to actually ask you a more historical question. I've been reading Timothy Snyder's book on Lithuania, Poland, Belarus, Ukraine. I mean, the whole history, beginning with the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. And I guess I never really understood the way that, first of all, these national identities had actually been deliberately created over the years, and how the country's histories were very much intertwined with one another. I think that one of the big achievements of the end of the Cold War was actually the full reconciliation between Poland and Lithuania.
Oh, yes.
Because I believe it was in 1920 that Poland actually invaded Lithuania. Majority of but a very large number of the residents of Vilnius, your capital, had actually been Poles rather than Lithuanians, and there's a lot of transfers of populations, and of course Vilnius was also a very heavily Jewish city, and that population had been wiped out by the by the Nazis. But how do you explain and I remember at the time I was in the State Department when the Berlin Wall came down, and countries in Eastern Europe were liberated, and there was some fear that there would be bad blood between Poland and Lithuania. How did those national identities manage to separate themselves and then decide to live peacefully next to each other?
Well, we had more than 400 years of common statehood, not just not neighborhood, not cohabitation, but we've been one state with two capitals, a king and a duke, for a while, but still, we had at the very end of our two-state country, we had what was probably one of the earliest constitutions, parliamentary constitutions in Europe and in the world. So there are so many things that bind us. Even though languages are completely different, we consider ourselves culturally quite different. Even though when you look at it, the differences are much smaller than we would like to admit. We're both Catholic countries, baptized basically by the same king, Lithuanian king, which later became Polish king. So it's a very fascinating mix that we've lived in. And then when modern times come, we are caught in a very, very difficult and hurtful struggle, where Poles at the beginning of 20th century re-emerge as a bigger brother with some. Just
to remind people, Poland had been partitioned at the end of the 18th century, ceased to exist as a
Poland and
country.
Lithuania. So at the end of the 18th century, the country, the Rzeczpospolita, two-state union of Lithuania and Poland has been partitioned between Russia, Austro-Hungary, and what was then Prussia, the early pre-German state.
Right.
So it was partitioned into three and ceased to exist. Germany re-emerged during the Napoleonic Wars, but unfortunately Lithuania did not. And after the First World War, Poland reclaims full statehood, Lithuania as well. But then the Polish leadership have an idea that the best in all the region's interest would be to reconstitute the previous entity, Lithuania, encompassing Poland, Lithuania, and big part of Ukraine. And Lithuanians were not particularly excited about the proposal, and there was an invasion, and Poland then captured part of Lithuania, about a third, with our capital. That strained our relationship very heavily. and actually was used as a precondition for later Soviet invasion, because they offered our capital back to us if we allow Russian army in. And one of the most unfortunate decisions by our then government in 1939 was to take the capital back, allow Russians in, and lose the country. So the history created in Eastern Europe is never easy. we create a tiny bit less amount of history than the Balkans do, but we still it's a bit too much for us. So then, 1990s, Lithuania reemerges as an independent country in 1990, March 11th. And one of the major questions that is then in the heads of our leaders in Lithuania, are we sure that Poland will not put a claim on something of Vilnius, or something that they might believe that, kind of under their occupation, and there was another fact that basically would not recognize the occupation of Vilnius. So by the end of 1930s, they've issued ultimatum so that we do recognize, and the government accepted the ultimatum. So there was a chance that Poles claim Vilnius after 1990s based on the 1930s ultimatum, and then we're caught in a very difficult position. But it was also part of very deep understanding among Lech Walesa and other leaders in the early 90s Polish leadership, that in order for Poland to be safe, they need good relationship with
it was very wise.
It was extremely wise. And I was told that it was part of it was almost like a gentleman's agreement. That the leaders of Lithuania and Poland shook hands and decided that this is it. We started.
Does the populist Law and Justice Party in Poland, do they lay claim to Lithuania?
No,
they don't. So they've given up also.
No. We had the only issues that we've had with Poland in regards to that question, there's quite a sizable minority, Polish-speaking minority in Lithuania, and all Polish governments wanted to make sure that the interests of Poles in Lithuania are guarded. So now they have education, primary education, secondary education. They even have a university in Polish language in Lithuania. And there is a more further from the center right people, which might not always have been very happy about this. They do remember 1920s. They have a question whether all of these people are, they're part of the invasion, so to say, and whether we should be paying anything extra to them. But I'm glad as well that this, at least at this point, the question is 99% settled.
So I think there's a good lesson for everybody in all of this, which is that the doctrine of liberalism arose in the middle of the 17th century because you had all these mixed, at that time it was a conflict between Protestants and Catholics, but you have all these mixed populations, and if they insist on creating political units based on these identities, religious or ethnic or linguistic, because everybody's so mixed together, there's going to be endless conflict. And the liberal principle basically says, well, we have to tolerate people that may not share our religion, our ethnicity, our language, because we have a larger interest in peace and living together. And I think that sometimes people who criticize liberalism as old-fashioned forget that that's one of the purposes. It's to allow Poles and Lithuanians and Belarusians and Ukrainians, everyone else, to actually live peacefully and not constantly be saying, oh, we lost these territories 2 generations ago and we need to reclaim them.
That has been, so when what European Union is called is one of the most significant, if not the most significant liberal project. That was chosen as a way, how do you settle the continent that is, that has created 2 of the most horrific wars in human history. And that project was applied to a very difficult region, Central and Eastern Europe, with its own history, its own problems and wars and and animosities and friendships and whatnot, different religions, languages, and so many other things, and actually it worked.
Yeah, and people forget that it worked.
And people forget. I mean, we basically, there is a border on the map between Lithuania and Poland. But, I can just sit in the car or bike or just walk through and that's it. I can move, I can buy a house in Poland, and I'm sure that I would be allowed to do that. The same goes for Poles. They can create a business in Lithuania, or purchase or create a company. And we wanted that so that all the tensions and the questions would be removed, the first day that we are members of EU. It didn't happen. It took a while. But now we're probably as close to Poland strategically as we've ever been in a long time.
In 1994, after Poland entered the EU, I went to a conference in the Vatican, actually. But there was a luncheon to celebrate Poland's accession. And at the table I was sitting at was a very senior German official who had actually served in the Wehrmacht during the war, and a Pole who had been one of the Polish liberation forces that had fought the Germans and then later the Soviets in 1944-45. And, they were sitting at the same table together, both toasting Poland's entry into the EU. And I thought that was just an incredible, very moving symbol of the kind of reconciliation that the European Union had made possible.
But you probably know that the question, that there is a question between Germany and Poland that has, well, at least in some political circles in Poland, has not been yet resolved. The question of reparations. Because Poland kind of signed off that everything that that Germany did has been paid off while it was part of Warsaw Pact and pretty much controlled by Soviet Union. I think it was 1954, and now especially the right
Law and Justice
Law and Justice Party has always have this idea that we have to go back to this question. And it puts a lot of Germans in a tough spot.
And again, I just think that's a lesson for why you need liberal politics. If your political leaders are demanding, these reparations from generations ago, you're not going to live in peace in the future, and you really ought to be focused on other things.
Just I'm not sure how much the arguments for liberalism are now heard.
Okay, well, that's what we're making them here now. So.
Exactly,
Okay, so Gabrielius, Mr. Foreign Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Great conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here at Stanford
Thank you. It's my
this
pleasure.
year.